Rolling?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Roy, first of all, what inspired you to do this trophy?
Well, I think from my own point of view, the record...
Start one more time.
yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
All right. Still rolling?
Yeah.
Okay. Roy, first of all, what inspired you to build this trophy?
Well, we've been sailing this race for a lot of years, you know, and the record that Merlin set in '77 was the second year I went on the race. And so it was kind of a record that was out there in my memory of the race for a long time. And then at some point, and everybody was aiming at it, you know, and coming close. And in 1987, 10 years after Merlin set the record, I think there were 6 boats came in within about 3 or 4 hours of that record. So you knew it was kind of there to be had if the right year came along, you know. And so at some point, I think along the way, Bill Lee suggested that, gosh, there's trophies for everything in Transpac except for who holds the record for the best elapsed time. And, you know, the barn door is there and it's a big deal and everything, but somebody gets the barn door every year. And in this case, there was no way to mark the real record for how quick somebody ever got there. So it just came to me that maybe there ought to be this kind of a trophy. And it coincided as it happened. The idea and the Paiwacket 1997 record sort of all happened at the same time. And I got in touch with Andrea about the time we set the record, strangely. With the idea of designing something that would be a permanent memorial to all the record holders going back to the very beginning of the race.
And how did you find Andrea, and why did you choose Andrea to do this trophy?
I've known Andrea for, gosh, over 10 years, I guess, 15 close to, I think, in connection with doing some other trophies and just being a friend as well. And I've admired what he does, and I've admired his sensitivity to the subject at hand. And I knew that he would spend a long time trying to figure out what would be appropriate for this kind of a trophy, which he did. And we had a lot of fun actually collaborating with it and taking him sailing and pointing out all the goodies and talking about what it really meant to get there as quick as we did or anyone else did.
Going back to Andrea, what exactly is his background in building trophies?
He's a sculptor. His father's a sculptor. For me, actually, we met when we did a trophy for what we call the Disney Legends, which is a trophy that honors a lot of the Disney veterans who didn't get as much credit probably through the years as they should have. And so Andrea and I put together this trophy, which we've now given out over 100 of to Disney veterans around the world, that sort of speaks to the Disney tradition and what it is. It's got Mickey Mouse's hand and a little wand with a star, and it's got a base that represents a lot of the various films and parks and things, the whole gamut of what we do.
So when you gave Andrea this assignment, did you give him any parameters, or did you kind of like just let him go with it?
Well, I think I probably gave him way too many parameters because there's so much to this race. You know, there's California and there's Hawaii to start with, which are two quite different things, and there's the notion of the rush of sailing fast through the water and spinnakers up and big waves and all that kind of thing. And there was one of the things that occurred to me early was that buoy at Diamond Head that you go by that marks the finish line. And there's the folklore of Hawaii and the South Pacific and all of that kind of thing. So, you know, I mean, we sort of threw all that stuff out on the table and said, how does this come together in the shape of something? So that process took a while, but it was fun, as I said, to go through it because it means a lot, I think, and will mean a lot to anyone who sees it.
Right. So what extent was Andrea's research, you know, to take all this information? What did he do to come up
I
with?
think the first thing he did was to come back with an awful lot of pictures he cut out of magazines, all pasted up on boards, and said, do you like this or do you like that? And we wound up pasting up stars on some of the ones that sort of represented ideas that we liked. One of the ideas that was really, and you see in the trophy that's very prominent, is the notion of time. And the clock on the back end of the trophy, or the clock mechanism that you see on the back of the trophy, Andrea went clear over to Greenwich in England, where the original Harris clock that was the means by which navigators first were able to find their position on the Earth all the time. It was the first clock that was built to be accurate at sea over long periods of time. And that thing is still in Greenwich and still running, and it's an incredible, fascinating piece of gearing and stuff going around and back and forth, you know. So that notion is represented very strongly in the clock and in the mechanism.
When Andrea and Cammie brought the first mock-up to your office, what was your first reaction?
Woo. I actually, the first mock-up was a kind of a little one, I think. And so it was a little clay model. And we looked at it and said, yeah, that's great. That's a really, really good idea. There was, you know, you had to use your imagination fairly strongly at that moment in time. But it had all the pieces in it. There was a clock face that we could use to set the days and hours and minutes and seconds, and there was the shape of a spinnaker, and there was the backside that sort of was roughed up to look somewhat clock-like. And there was a little base about probably that high that had little tiny half models on it that would show the various record holders. And we said, yeah, great idea. Let's see what it looks like full size.
And so when he brought in the full size?
Now it really grew. It grew in a major sort of way. And actually, you know, was bigger than, good morning.
Oh, shoot. Hello?
Vibrator something?
No, I swore I would turn it off.
The people forget, you know. I've seen it happen on a set full of 50 people.
It's so
They now,
embarrassing.
you know, in addition to quiet on the set and everything, they now just say cell phones off.
Cell phones off.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, that was.
Where were we?
Okay, we were when they brought. Are we
We're
rolling?
rolling. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
When Andrea and Cammie brought the trophy in, your reaction.
My reaction to the full-sized version was that it's really full-sized. It really did get pretty big, you know. But then when you looked at it and kind of took into account what it was and what it represented and what it was going to look like finished, you couldn't imagine making it smaller either. So here we are, you know. It came out being what it was, which I think is one of my basic beliefs in life, is that things ought to be what they are and not try to be forced into some particular size of box. So it certainly has gotten people's attention.
Yes, it definitely has. When the pieces were all finally coming together in Andrea's warehouse out in Pasadena, you went to go visit him, and it was kind of shaping up. Was this kind of what you had visualized, and what were your thoughts?
Oh, it was great. That's one of the, I'm sure Andrea will say so too, that's one of the fun parts of something like this, is watching the pieces come together and fit and become sort of more than the sum of the parts. And this was great fun, and you could really sort of imagine suddenly being at the trophy ceremony and opening the face of this thing and moving the hands around and saying, look, here's a new record holder, you know. And so that was a terrific thrill. I couldn't wait to have everybody see it.
So we have to cut for
Okay. We're halfway through. More than halfway.
and we've got speed.
And we were out of tape? Is that what it was?
No, just battery change.
Oh, okay.
Should switch before we got started.
Okay, we're speeding and we're all set.
Let me burp. There we go. You can use that.
Classic moment.
Okay. What kind of time went into building this trophy? And
A lot. You really need to ask Andrea that, but it occurred, I think, from inception to finished
Wait a
product.
minute. I'm sorry, somebody's closing. Can we hear that?
Yeah.
All right, let's go back.
Okay.
How long did it take from concept to completion to do this trophy?
from the very moment that I started talking to Andrea till the time the trophy was really finished was, I don't know, the better part of a year, I think. It must have been close to that, if it wasn't longer than that.
Yeah.
Everything like this takes longer than you think it should.
Tell me about it. Okay, so when somebody breaks the elapsed time, what exactly happens to this trophy?
Well, we got really lucky and we did it this year, so we know precisely how it works. The theory and the practice came out together. It was really fun. The trophy was on the stage there in Honolulu, and when it came time to announce the new record, we went up and we opened the face of it and moved the hands. We moved there's a thing that shows the year that it occurred in, and then we didn't have to move the days, but we moved the hours and the minutes and the seconds to the new record, and closed up the face, and then we had a little model that Kenny Gardner was really quick to make of the boat, and we pasted it on the front. And there it was, and it was a great ceremony, and I could up there doing it, I could hear the crowd behind me kind of going, "Oh, that's neat." They really kind of got it,
Uh-huh. And then what happens to the trophy so whoever wins it, what happens?
The deed of gift, which came to Transpacific Yacht Club along with the trophy, says that whoever holds the record has the right to keep the trophy in his yacht club for the next couple of years until the next race, and that thereafter it should be at all the trophy dinners every other year in Honolulu, but otherwise it should move through an assortment of Southern California yacht clubs, from San Diego to Cal to LA to Newport Harbor Yacht Club to St. Francis as well. And so that's the kind of process that's going to happen unless somebody else wins it next time, and then it goes to his yacht club.
What's the official name of this trophy?
What is it? It's the
Transpacific New Course Record Trophy.
Okay, yeah. It's the Transpacific, wait a minute, Transpacific Yacht Club New Course Trophy. New Course Record Trophy.
Record Trophy. That's a long
All right,
name.
let me try that
you gotta
again.
figure out it.
It's the Transpacific Yacht Club New Course Record Trophy.
Okay. So wouldn't a better name be just the Elapsed Time Trophy?
I think it'll probably get called something like that as
Yeah.
time goes by. The people have a way of shortening things down, but it's like a popular movement. The people will make up their own name for it, I think.
Okay, so there's this little time capsule inside the trophy. And so the winners get to put their mementos in there. What would you like to put in there?
Well, I think what I want to do is get the whole crew together and talk about it. Certainly one thing I want to put in there is a photograph of the whole crew, because they're the guys that did it. And we did make a great picture of the whole crew standing on the back of the boat at going about 20 knots off Molokai just before the finish. So I have that, and I'll get everybody to sign it, and I think we'll put that in there. But beyond that, I'm not sure. Maybe somebody will come up with something really neat.
Yeah. Okay. What do you hope that this trophy will do for Transpac?
Well, I think what I hope is that it sort of becomes a concrete realization of the thing that was always out there, which was, in the last 20 years, was Merlin's record. And, records are out there to be broken. This is a really nice embodiment of the fact that there is a record there to be broken, and something that you can sort of hold in your hands that represents it. So what I hope is it says to a lot of people, come try to break this thing and try to win this trophy, because it's what they're there for. I hope somebody breaks our record, and I hope it's us.
What are your hopes for the future of Transpac?
I just hope that we can really bring it back to the kind of heyday that when the first year I went in '75, there were 82 entries, which really filled up Alawai, from one end of the Transpac row to the other, and it was great. And I'd love to see that sort of entry list again, and I think there's a lot of ways to do that, and we're working on them all. And anybody that comes on the race loves it. The voyage itself is fabulous. We're sailing your boat downwind day after day in the trade winds and the big seas, and chasing squalls around trying to go faster and all of those things. And then you get there, and the Hawaii welcome is so wonderful. It's just like no other race in the world that way, and it's warm and all of that good stuff, you know. So I hope it helps do that.
Okay. Great.
Okay.
Oh no, I'm
50
going to ask
minutes?
you about parameters.
Okay, we've got speed.
Okay, Andrea, when Roy first approached you about this assignment, what kind of parameters did he give you?
Well, Roy's really gracious with the projects that he gives us when we've worked with him. There were quite a bit of parameters, obviously, because it's the Transpacific Yacht Race. But about the only thing we started with was that he and Bill Lee had been kicking this idea around, and with the Commodore, they thought it would be a pretty good idea to do something, and, you know, what did I think? And that's where we started.
What did you think? I mean, were you thinking, oh my gosh, all this information, I mean, what was going through your mind?
Well, Roy, you know, it's funny because knowing just personally Roy and that he's been chasing winning the Transpac, not only his son breaking the record and how proud he was of that, but knowing that he's been going every 2 years for many years trying to win that race and coming close but never quite getting it, I knew that a huge portion of what we would bring to this would be to try to incorporate the feeling of, you know, daring to dream, daring to win that race. And somehow, whatever the ultimate piece ended up being, we felt it had to have a quality where someone would look at it and say, wow, maybe I could win that thing. Inspiring.
Mm-hmm. What kind of research went into coming up with this design?
Well, initially we went and spent some time with Roy, and he gave us an enormous amount of information just personally about what it's like to be in the race, participate in the race, some of the history. He gave us a couple of great books about the Transpacific Yacht Race, its beginnings, you know, records and all that sort of stuff. So initially we started with him, and then as we got into actually developing some concepts, some initial concepts, we ended up traveling all the way to England to do some visual research on the Harrison clock, which was, after 4 tries, this Englishman finally solved the riddle of longitude with the very first working chronometer. And we went to England to take a look at these things because there was an element about what he did in his clocks which also said navigation. And the 2 elements that we were focusing on initially for a trophy were the celebration of time and navigation, which are the 2 very critical things for Transpacific Yacht Race, and especially a new course record trophy.
Mm-hmm. All right, and how did Bill Lee inspire your thinking in this trophy?
Well, I think, you know, great things are accomplished by many people across all sorts of walks of life. But for me, Bill Lee was the quintessential inspiration. I had already on one side Roy, who just, I mean, it's been a passion of his to win this race. And then the 1 year he can't participate, for his son to not only win the race and establish a new course record, that was an extraordinary, inspiring element. The other side was this crazy guy in Santa Cruz that with his friends and a bunch of beer built this boat that completely revolutionized not only the race, established a record that held for 20 years, and also completely revolutionized boat design. And so to me, I felt that in the trophy, if I could get an element that was as special and as unique as what Bill Lee brought to the race, and as touching and as inspiring as Roy Patrick winning the race for his dad, I thought, well, boom, then we've got it. That's going to be success.
Okay. What was Roy's reaction when you brought the first full-size mock-up into his office?
His eyes got wide. And part of the reason we did the full foam mock-up was because I was a bit concerned that size-wise, we had talked about size-wise what it might end up being, but looking at it in actuality, I thought, well, before we go forward, let's just verify that the size is okay. And his eyes got very wide, and I could just, it's wonderful to work with Roy because he can see past the pins and the foam and all the things. You know, when you say this is koa and this is bronze or this is magnesium, you can see he's actually studying and visualizing the thing as it actually would look. And at the end of that, his eyes were still quite wide and
Were you concerned?
I was concerned initially, but by the end of it, it was pretty clear to me that he felt the size lent to its stature. It's an important thing that we're creating. It needs not only to be impressive to the people that are here now, but 100 years from now. This is something we're leaving behind. And in the back of my mind, I kept thinking, well, I think Roy sees this as something that'll far outlast us and should be a wonderful legacy for this period in time. So at the end of that meeting, he was thumbs up, and we went forward.
How many hours, manpower hours, did it take to build this from the concept to the completion?
You know, I think it's innumerable. We could tell you that probably technically 4 or 5 months went by of actual working time in the studio and the foundry and putting things together. But Cami is my wife, and she's the other half of this that you don't see. But I mean, we spent hundreds of hours just trying to figure out how to pull it off. Once we had a concept, just about every kind of material we could come up with, we tried to incorporate into the piece. Because again, subtly, the Transpacific Yacht Race, the boats that participate, they look sleek, they look beautiful, they look rather graceful and simple, but when you really start to study them, you see that it's an incredible composite of materials. And that's part of what's advancing the race forward. And so the trophy needed to have an element that was old yet new, and the mix of materials gave us this sense of new. And in mixing materials, the challenge, no different than Harrison had when he made his first chronometer, the H1, is how do you mix materials so they don't work against each other, but work together not only functionally but also visually. And that took quite a bit of time. There was a lot of stumbling and a lot of times that we thought, oh my gosh, I'm just not going to pull it off. But every time we stumbled and got up, it was a lesson, and we just moved forward. So those are the hours you just can't account for. But it was pretty much in our minds and our hearts for a good long time, at least a year.
Mm-hmm. Now the pieces come from a variety of different places. Can you describe all the different areas that the pieces were done and flown in and so forth?
Well, almost all of the metal pieces, or the bronze pieces, originated either in clay or in wood, and we cast the bronze or etched in magnesium. The woods we selected those for a reason. The Hawaiian koa wood, which is in the midsection of the trophy, we wanted to pay an homage to the beginnings of the race, which go back to the turn of the century and Kalakaua's dream, King Kalakaua's dream, to create a better friendship between the islanders and the mainlanders. So Hawaiian koa wood seemed the natural choice. Now, Hawaii is pretty tight about the supply of wood that they let out, and finding it here in Los Angeles was a bit of a trick. But we found a guy that squirreled away planks of it in a little downtown shop, and managed to get one that looked like it was ripped right off the side of a tree, and transformed that into the midsection. The teak, which holds the piece, is all native teak. But again, teak is a material that's used so much on boats and yacht clubs. It's associated with the oceans in some way that it seemed natural. So those two woods combining with the bronze represent kind of a variety of mediums, very organic to very inorganic.
Explain the clock. I mean, somebody, I guess, mentioned to you or asked you, oh, where'd you buy the clock?
Right.
Well,
the clock was directly inspired by Harrison's 4 clocks, the H1, the H2, the H3, and then what was called the Jeffrey watch in England. And they were the first working chronometers. It is not a replica of those clocks. It literally has some elements that bring back the feeling of the Harrison clocks. Because since we're marking a record time, even though the clock is not functional, we wanted people to look at it initially and think, oh, perhaps it is functional. Every piece was made in wood or in lucite or in clay. And it's kind of Cammie and I both chuckle because they look at the trophy and they say, what a wonderful trophy. Where did you get that clock? And we said, well, we made that clock. And they don't believe it. But that's the origins are in John Harrison and his clocks.
And how did you come up with the design of the boat and I see the buoy? How was that all?
Well,
how
the
did that
clock, conceptually the clock, the idea of the clock was there was this very magical moment that Roy spoke about when you are in the Transpacific Yacht Race as a participant, and that magical moment is the moment you go by the buoy off of Diamond Head. That signals the end of the race. Now the idea is to stick as close to that buoy to keep a faster time as possible, but keep a distance away that you don't touch it, because if you touch that buoy, you're out. You're disqualified. So the top portion of the trophy, the boat sailing by the buoy, freezes the clock. This clock only changes when that magical moment occurs and a boat is fortunate enough to set a new course record. At that point, the clock is changed and frozen to that new time. And so that whole portion of the trophy represents that moment. It represents the period where a crew flies by the buoy, by the seat of their pants, wins the race, and manages to establish a new course record trophy.
Okay. What about the base? Okay, you've got like a little sextant thing there.
Correct.
What explain what that
All
is.
those elements are elements that talk about navigation, which again, in the early conversations with Roy, he spoke about the importance in Transpac of showing that you can navigate your way across. And it's one of the only modern races left where you actually need to show that proof. And so those elements are reminders of the fact that the Transpacific Yacht Race is a modern, viable, technologically advanced race, but it's still dependent also on some things that are ancient, some things that are old. So it's a reminder of the old.
Okay. Any other parts of the trophy that you can talk about that may be of interest?
Well, the midsection of the trophy is kind of probably, for me, the most special part. It holds several things that are quite lovely. The front shows an evolution of yacht design. The boats that have been fortunate enough to establish this new course record get their name and their boat's half model on the midsection. And what's wonderful about that is it shows, it wasn't our intent, but someone came up to us when we unveiled the trophy and said, you know, what's amazing about the midsection is it shows an evolution of yacht design over the years, which is really, I think, quite wonderful. Plus, I think it's just extraordinary for the members of families of boats that won 50 years ago, for instance, to be able to look at that and say, wow, that was my great-grandfather, or that was my father. On the back side of the midsection is the likeness of Ulu, the god of the oceans. Again, this goes back to connecting to the Hawaiian roots of the race. And under Ulu's mouth, we've placed a secret time capsule. And that time capsule is to create a living legacy for the trophy for those people that have just won the race and established this new course record trophy, or record, excuse me, and to put some mementos that are important or that remind them of that moment, or that capture, that they want to leave behind. So the next boat that comes along, when they open up that box, they find something from the previous boat.
Okay. Let's see. I think you're too easy to interview. Ask one question and you answered all the other ones. What, in making the initial design, what kind of message did you really want to be conveyed to anybody who looked at this? What was the main message you as an artist that wanted to convey to the viewer?
I wanted to inspire them. On a personal note, I climb mountains. And in climbing mountains, it makes me a better individual. The people that sailed this race, I think at the end, when you truly dig down and find out why do they sail, I think we have the same thing in common. There's this goal of betterment, personal betterment, and I think if someone could look at this and walk away and feel inspired to do whatever they want to do, that would be the message. You know, to me, it's extraordinary that someone like Roy Disney feels inspired enough to go back after his son has just broken a 20-year-old record and say, I'm going to do it again. Mm-hmm. It also inspires me that a guy with a chicken coop and a lot of beer completely reinvented the notion of modern sailing because he had a dream to do that. And the message is dare to dream. So, dare to dream.
I like that. I like it. Roy? Is he in here? Any other things? Isn't he great? He just like, whoa. That's amazing.
No, I could talk forever, but I'm watching.
I have one.